thrilled to be here. I want to say you know you've made it when you have not one, but two disclaimer slides. And I think we have the longest disclaimer slide. That's how we distinguish ourselves. I won't be making any claims today. We have two drugs under NDA review with the FDA, so I will be proclaiming instead of claiming. We had a couple of interesting ideas when we started Aldeyra 15 years ago. One was about RASP. RASP stands for reactive aldehyde species, which is a series of small molecules, a novel pharmaceutical target that is unique in pharmacology. Now, we don't have many drugs that do anything else but bind proteins. If you think about it, every drug you probably ever used binds a protein, not RASP. RASP modulators bind a series of small molecules. So this is a brand new pharmacology. Mark Gleason just told me that he has a non-protein binding drug, but let's pretend he doesn't exist just for a second. The other unique idea we had was we're going to start in the front of the eye and go back and then go down to the rest of the body. And we've done just that. So we started with dry eye disease and a drug called Reproxalap, which is a first-in-class RASP modulator, now under NDA review as of November last year. And then we went to the retina. We have a product called ADX2191 for lymphoma, ocular lymphoma, and PVR. It's under NDA review for lymphoma as we speak. And then we've been successful in going to the rest of the body. We have phase 2 trials in psoriasis and atopic dermatitis and hepatitis and so forth and so on. So we've really started in the front of the eye and gone backwards and into the rest of the body, which is where I think our field should go. Too often, I think we inherit drugs from other parts of the body, cyclosporin is an example, steroids is an example. But let us be the innovators and let other parts of the body or other clinicians inherit what we do. I want to talk about what I think is the best dry eye clinical trial ever. I realize I'm biased, but one of the things we did was we ran, I think, the first large crossover trial in dry eye disease. Now, crossover is important because what that means is every patient gets drug and every patient gets vehicle, and you compare each patient to his or herself. That's important in dry eye because it's such a heterogeneous condition, right? There are many different flavors of dry eye, as we know, and thus comparing one person to his or herself is important and eliminates a lot of variability. Primary endpoints were Schirmer test and redness. We hit both. I think RASP are interesting because they're pro-inflammatory in the long term, but in the short term, you can see other effects, and here are two that are important to patients and clinicians. But I think more important was sort of the symptom data that we see, and every symptom we measured worked in this trial. In other words, the blue line is lower than the gray line for every graph here, and I think that speaks to the acute activity of Reproxalap in dry eye disease. A distinguishing characteristic for Reproxalap, unlike the currently available therapies, is the drug works quickly, or appears to work quickly. And you can see that here. In fact, the first time point measured, this is in a dry eye chamber, the first time point measured is lower for drug than vehicle. And the reason for that is patients get drug before coming into the chamber, and they receive a little bit of drug the day before. But remarkable how fast, relative to what we're used to today, this drug seems to be working. And in the bottom right, I always highlight itching. We think about itching as a symptom of allergic conjunctivitis, but dry tissue itches. And that's clearly true in dry eye. And I think in our final phase 3 trial for allergic conjunctivitis and Reproxalap, and maybe one day we'll have a drug approved for both conditions. Let me switch to the back of the eye. I mentioned 2191 previously. Lymphoma is a fatal cancer when it occurs in the eye. This is primary vitreoretinal lymphoma or ocular lymphoma. No drug approved. We submitted an NDA in December of last year. Methotrexate is the standard of care. 2191 is a unique formulation of 2191 designed in part to minimize the toxicity associated with methotrexate injection to the eye, which primarily happens on the cornea. So we've reduced the volume, we've increased the density so that the methotrexate sinks back towards the retina. We've asked for priority review from the FDA. FDA often grants priority review for cases where there's a serious disease and no therapy. The other condition we're looking at is PVR. I thought we were the only company looking at PVR until I saw Monty's presentation. But I will tell you, this is also a rare disease and a big problem. PVR occurs after retinal detachments, and it's very difficult to treat. There's some preliminary evidence regarding methotrexate use in PVR, and I'll show some of that in a second. We ran a phase 3 trial last year in PVR with good results. We hit the primary endpoint that is relative to the literature. We reduced the main complication of PVR, which is retinal redetachment. And the safety profile is impressive. Up there at the top line, you see keratitis, which again is the primary side effect of methotrexate, but less than what you'd expect to see. If you look at literature, and then if you look at every other side effect, it's actually safer to give 2191 after PVR surgery than it is to not give methotrexate or 2191. So we have a lot of exciting events coming up. We're thrilled to work with this community. We're thrilled to innovate, starting in the front of the eye and going backwards. And so many of you have been so supportive to us, and we look forward to continuing those conversations. Thank you.